Welcome everybody back to the Freedom Network. We're glad that you joined us today. I'm your host, Gary Rosenberg. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at RosenbergGary. That's with a capital R and a capital G. You can email us at timorgary@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you about your local news, your opinions on stories that we talk about. Whether you agree or you disagree, we still want to hear from you. And in the future, that email address is going to be able to win you prizes on contests and stuff like that we're going to have. Just some ideas that I'm formulating for our great listeners out there. Today, we're going to be talking about the government, taxes, government overreach, and gun control. A pretty robust amount of topics, but we promise to touch on all of them. You know, right off the bat, we see this tax mentality that we're getting from the federal government and now right here at home. Folks, what our governor is proposing is to take more money out of your pocket. Now, I don't know about you, but we discussed on a previous program about how Obama said he was going to give us a tax cut, but my paycheck, I don't know about yours, but my paycheck is less now than it was, say, 10 weeks ago. Well, that could be happening again to you, courtesy of the governor. So, you know, I looked all over the web and on newspapers and watched his speech, and it's amazing how you get all these conflicting, different reports. It's very difficult to decipher all the information. We're going to try to do some of that here right now. So, there's one that talks about income taxes going up and sales taxes going down. Now, I read that on several websites. Before we get into actually where they think this money may be able to come from, just remember one thing. If you work, you make income. When they raise an income tax, 100% of what you make is getting taxed. If they want to mess with the sales tax or say we'll bring the sales tax down a little bit, this makes no sense. They can't possibly mathematically offset each other. They just can't, because you make more than you spend on taxable items. Think about it. So that's the carrot that they love to dangle. So what will happen is if that was to happen, and we did have a sales tax that was to go down a bit and an income tax that was to come up a bit, essentially what we'd be looking at is people that work paying more. People that don't work, that may get a check from the government, they only spend money. They'll actually be getting a tax decrease because they don't earn money. Now, I don't mean that to be derogative, but if you don't go out and work for a living and somehow money gets into your bank account, then that's what it is. You're taking money from society. Why do you pay less taxes? Because in effect, that's what's happening here, is that the people at the bottom with my money will pay less taxes with your money. Why do we stand for this? Why would we even entertain the idea? We fund the whole thing. It's all the money of the middle class, all of it. So don't buy into these smoke and mirrors that you're seeing. And boy, you go on the web or you watch some of these programs on television, and you're going to see a lot of contradicting, a lot of different reports. What I did is I went to the Boston Business Journal, I went to boston.com, try to keep it local, also go national, Fox News, CNN. I go all over the place because I want to find out what the story is. What I was able to find out here, that overall he's seeking $1 billion a year in new revenue. Okay, $1 billion a year in new revenue. He wants to fund projects that are designed to fund public transit, highway operations, reduce MBTA debt, and borrow money to double infrastructure spending. Okay, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. It's not about, we don't have a revenue problem, be it in the state or be it in the nation. In most cases, We have a spending problem. I don't know about you, but I make a certain amount of money, and that's what you can spend. You can get some credit, and believe me, it's not never ending. So now, what we're going to do is we'll borrow some money. I mean, we just can't keep printing it at the federal level and expect the dollar to be worth anything. And when you take those dollars out of the people's hands that earn the money, they're the ones that spend the money, you've got yourself a big problem. So, read on this. On Boston.com, Patrick listed possible revenue sources, including, but not limited to, I'm sure, and I'm not trying to say that he wants to get all of these things passed. Well, actually, let me back up a minute. He does want to get all of these passed, and if he had an opportunity, he would take as much as he possibly could out of your pocket. And the only thing standing between him and your wallet is the Massachusetts legislator. Good luck. Good luck. All right, so he's looking at raising the gas tax from 21 cents to 51 cents a gallon. Raising the sales tax from 6.25 to 7.75. Here it says raising the state income tax and sales tax also, 6.25 to 7.75. I'm sorry, I had that backwards. I'm sorry, the printing is very small. I think I'm getting to the point where I need some glasses. Sales tax, 6.25 to 7.75. That's an increase. That's contradictory to what we've heard on television, through speeches, and those kind of things. Raising that income tax from 5.66 is really, they just take these numbers, folks, and they're just going to keep throwing them at you until you don't understand them anymore. And I read down these lists, and I'm, wait, this list here says this, and this list here says this. And basically, all that's going to happen here is they're going to argue about numbers. Numbers are going to be thrown around. They're going to be big numbers. And then somebody's going to come, and it will probably be Deval himself, and say, look, you can already see the legislature setting this up. I say we would have had to have had an increase of X percent. But you know what? I've saved us. I'm so good at what I do. We can do it for this percent increase. And then everybody jumps on board and they say, oh, this is fantastic. Look at, he just saved us this money. Didn't save you anything. He's taking more out of your pocket. Levying a vehicle miles traveled tax at 2.4 cents per mile. I don't even know what that is. I was afraid to research it. That's really scary right there. New emissions-based vehicle title and registration fees could raise $175 million. So, how much do we go? How much do we keep going back to the guy that drives his vehicle? We're going to get into that in a minute. A payroll tax on workers in regions with transit service could raise $140 million to $207 million. Think about that. In regions, a payroll tax, if you live in a region where there's transit service, they may be looking at additional payroll deductions. Evidently, the state needs $684 million a year in addition to operate the existing transportation system that we have. Governor Patrick's transportation plan, dubbed the way forward. Really? Give me a break. Can't you get something a little more original? Haven't we been moving forward for 4 years now? We are moving forward, man. We must be in the process of taking 12 steps back so we can take 1 step forward. Give me a break. There's really interesting stuff. He's seeking $9.3 billion over 10 years to bring the existing infrastructure into good repair. New infrastructure projects add up to $3.8 billion a year, and these reportedly include, and this comes from Boston.com, $1.8 billion for Boston to New Bedford, Fall River, South Coast Rail Service. Okay, can we just come back to reality? Do we need a rail service that's going to go from Boston to New Bedford and Fall River? What is that going to do? Other states have poured tons of money into rail. It doesn't mean a whole lot. Maybe you pick up some jobs doing it, but they're temporary jobs. Once it's complete, there's a big boom, everybody's happy, we can do this, we can travel, we can ship goods and all that kind of stuff. But then that wears off. And then you've got railroad tracks all over the place, right? You drive over them every day and you say, why don't any of these get used? But we got to go build some more. It makes absolutely no sense. What we need is more money in people's pockets that they can go out and spend. What is so difficult to understand about that? We don't need to be putting payroll taxes on people if they live in an area that they could use public transportation. It makes absolutely no sense. It's insane. $674 million for the MBTA Green Line extension to Somerville and Medford. Okay. $113.8 million for Pittsfield, New York City rail. What is New York City kicking into that? $20.8 million for Boston Hyannis rail. Listen, Governor, please, just stop, put down the coffee, look at the television, and listen to me. People don't ride on trains anymore. It's over. That happened a long time ago. Well, if you want to just hire people to do jobs, bring back your doormen at the State House and all that kind of stuff, because this doesn't pass the sniff test here at the Freedom Network. Not even close. I'm on fire about this because it makes this much sense. Talk about a gas tax. Are we trying to protect the vulnerable, right? We always hear about the people that don't have money, people that need help. And at the Freedom Network, of course, if you can't work, we want to help you. But if you can work, we want you to work. W-O-R-K seems to be the new four-letter word in the United States of America. So your gas tax goes up. Let's say it goes up, they're looking at probably about 20, 30 cents, right? It's not just your gas that you're paying to drive to work on your taxed money that you're paying more taxes on. It's the fees that they want to now impose that you pay with your taxed money. That's a payroll tax deduction. You think it's pre-tax like insurance? I doubt it. All the goods you see out there, have to, even if they go to a rail, Mr. Patrick, even if they're going to be delivered by rail, they got to get to the rail. And when they get from the rail, they've got to get to the point of business or get where it's got to go. And that all moves on trucks, folks, and those trucks run on gasoline. And when you raise those prices, do you think that the companies out there say, well, you know, this is our cost structure, this is our profit structure, this is where I need to be, but you know what, they've raised the gas tax, so we'll just make less. No, that's not how it works. How it works is that goes directly back right in to our pockets, because instead of that CD player at the local Mart store being $99.99, it's going to be $109.99. That's reality. That's what happens out there. You own a business, there's not a lot of costs you can just cut. There's a lot of fixed costs in a business that people don't understand. You can't lower your rent, lower your utilities. There's very little that you can do. You can either raise your prices, you can cut your workforce. There's not a lot of other options there. Once you've trimmed the fat and done all these things, and what's fantastic to see is that American businesses do this all the time, constantly, to stay afloat, especially in this Obama economy. So, why doesn't the government have to do that? Have you ever noticed that we don't pay enough in taxes, so Social Security could go broke, or police won't get paid, teachers will have no contract, the world will fall apart, but their paychecks will be fine, their pensions will be fine. You don't hear any talk about that. You see it online, the 28th Amendment crowd and things of this nature. The fact of the matter is, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about guns, but the government's in effect exempting itself as an entity of the budget from any cuts. That salaries, pensions, benefits, things of that nature just goes up when you are the legislator. Now maybe you work for the government in some capacity and you've seen your time cut down. Well, you should even be more upset, because that's the exact example that Obama stands up and says that companies are evil and rich people are bad. The behavior that they are displaying is exactly the behavior that he rails against on a daily basis if you listen in. Absolutely, positively doesn't make any sense. What do you think about that? You know, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Why don't you email us at timorgary@gmail.com and let us know what you think about that. Are you willing to pay more money? And if you are, and if you're going to send me that email, I'm going to send you an email back that asks you if this year when you do your taxes, are you going to elect to pay the alternate higher tax rate? Because I'm sure you are. Why wouldn't you? Who does in the state government? How many of them, how many pay the alternate tax that have voted for tax increases for you and for me, and then they find ways to exempt themselves? We're creating this ruling class. We're creating it. We're allowing it to happen before our eyes. And I'm going to tell you, folks, unless you stand up and start doing something about it, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. Very nicely segues into what I wanted to talk about next, which is government overreach. Because man, their hands so far in my pocket, it blows me away. And they're in your pocket too. Never think about what you make by what you take home in your paycheck. Never. Because what you make is what's on that top line. Before all the taxes and all the stuff and all the stuff that you pay. And you may pay 401ks, you may pay health insurance and all kinds of different things, right? Benefits that you may have. But what you make is the top line. So when someone says to you, if you make $52,000 a year, you go up to somebody. This is how conditioned we have become. This is how insane this country is becoming. You go up to somebody that makes $52,000 a year, and you say to them, hey, how much do you make a week? I bet you 7 or 8 out of 10 of them will say, I make about $700 a week. No, you don't. You make $1,000 a week. The government takes $300. And then, should I get the list back out? They're going to take even more. And they talk a good game. They talk a great game. They want to reach out. They want to help people. They want to help people to quit smoking, so they tax cigarettes, to educate youngsters about the dangers of alcohol, and they tax alcohol. You know who consumes most of those products, folks? It's not the rich. It's not the elite. It's your regular everyday Joes. As a matter of fact, the lower the income bracket, usually the more of that activity you find. So when they say that they're going to raise taxes and they're going to put more on this, how about the poor person that doesn't have the extra $38.50 a month for gas? They say it's just a cup of coffee a day. That's all it is. If you just give up a cup of coffee a day, we could do all this wonderful stuff. Well, I know the first thing you're going to do with it, you're going to make sure you get paid up there on Beacon Hill, aren't you? AEideas.com, Louisiana state regulators crack down on a supermarket chain's milk prices. You know why? The price was too low. I'm not kidding you. Go look it up. That's right. The price of the milk was too low. This has got to have something to do with fair trade, fair business practices, the government reaching in. It's amazing how it can snap back the other way, how it can really hurt you, isn't it? Because you think when that law was written, and this is what I mean about slippery slopes, folks, and listen up and listen close. Because when that law came out, I guarantee you it was passed as a basis so that they couldn't all get together and raise the price of something in Louisiana. Here we are today, probably several years after the bill is passed. It has slid down the slippery slope, and now it's too cheap. The government in Louisiana is telling people that the milk is too cheap. they have to pay more. Really? They're telling us what we now need to pay for milk. You don't think that could happen here in Massachusetts? Think again. Taxes on sugary and fatty foods, they're in every part of your life, right? So they're going to tell you, they're getting into consumption. They're going to now tax. They're going to tax or ban big drinks, fatty foods. If you eat this, you're going to get taxed more. If you eat that, you're going to get taxed more. Do we see and realize what's going on? I mean, really, do we grasp it? Or do we sit and watch shows like this one, listen to some guy rant and rave about this, that, and the other thing, turn it off, go to the fridge, get a bag of chips, sit down, eat them, and go on with our lives? Or are we going to do something about it? We have the right to do something about it. We have the duty to do something about it. But we don't. Do we work for the government? Because that's, I think, the way the government feels. The government has no money. They have our money. The government has no power. They have the power that we give them, that we, the people, give them. Think about this. You could conceivably take a $1,000 salary. I was doing some math, dangerous. You'd probably pay about $300 in taxes, maybe more, maybe less. You'd have $700 left, right? When you spend your $700, probably about $200 to $300 of it could be on food, which today is not taxable in this state, but you never know, as long as it's not prepared food. But then if it's prepared food, that's a whole other argument, because what is prepared food? And if you go into a store and you buy something that's in this kind of a canister, then it's going to be taxed because it's prepared food. But if you buy it over here, it's not taxed because it's not prepared. Do you understand what I mean? The lines that we're allowing the government to cross. So you bring that all down, and there you got your non-tax buy. So you got about $450, I would estimate, that you would have to spend. All right, now put in sales tax, gas tax, special fees, sin taxes that we just talked about, regulated prices, which is taxes. We had that here. We just recently, in this state, have been able to pick our own insurance companies. And they were afraid to let them in here for how many years? How many years did we hear that the government is doing us a favor? I saved over 25% in one phone call on my insurance once they opened up to competition. There should be no decision made by the government who I can buy my insurance from. You get your meal tax. God forbid you stay in a hotel, you'll pay a hotel tax. Tax, 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 tax. Follow the buck, bring it all the way down to the end. You're probably paying 50 to 60% in taxes, fees, and other baloney. I was on redstate.com. Very interesting place to visit. It's a neat website. Most of the stuff I agree with, but not everything. It's going to take you folks a little while to figure me out yet. I don't mind making fun of the right. And when I talk about the government, make sure you understand. I talk about the government, I talk about the present government and everybody in it. Here's some Obama abusive EPA. All right. Well, they call it Obama's EPA. But it is, because he's the president and he's in charge of that stuff. It targets bikers, ATV aficionados, and even gardeners. What? I mean, how did I not stop on this story, right? Do you know what a peanut gas tank is? If you ride a motorcycle, I bet you do. Most of them usually hold only about 2 to 3 gallons of gasoline. Barack Obama's Environmental Protection Agency may soon be making peanut gas tanks obsolete. The same is true for many all-terrain vehicles, gas-powered generators, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, and just about any other small tank that you can think of that you're putting fuel into. What could possibly be behind this? There's got to be something going on here, right? All right, the issue is the EPA's desire to increase the level in ethanol in gasoline up to 15%. The EPA will be requiring all consumers to purchase at least 4 gallons of gas. So you have to buy 4 gallons of gas. You have to. This is the proposal. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency will require consumers to buy 4 gallons of gasoline Concerns to government officials and federal lawmakers about possible damage to motorcycle and ATV engines caused by the inadvertent use of this E15, they call it. Ethanol is essentially grain alcohol. It's produced from crops. Nothing wrong with it. I'd love to run every car off of it. I'd love this country to be energy independent, but I want us to use the energy we have here. We can drill for it. We can get it. And absolutely there's a place for it. If we can grow gas, that's fantastic. The problem, though, is that these gas tanks that all these people have and that have been made and that people use in motorcycles, for the most part, would be the most affected. Think about it. Now you got to go put a new gas tank on your bike. It might not even fit. I don't know if you ride, if you don't ride. I don't profess to know everything about motorcycles, but I know one thing. A gas tank's made to fit on it. So we're going to exempt those people, and then that will make everyone feel good. Slide down the slope. Now you got to buy 4 gallons of gas. Slide down the slope. You'll be waiting in line, folks, to buy gas on Tuesdays and Thursdays if your license plate ends in 7. Mark my words. Extraordinary powers granted under Obamacare expand his political power has been on full display the past few weeks. There's lots of stuff in there. Now, if you go to Forbes.com, another great place to suck up some information from, you got to get out there, folks. You've got to get out and really submerge yourself to find out facts. And even then, you won't find out all the facts because everybody's got an agenda. So you go to the right, you go to the left, you go to the right, you go to the left, you find somewhere that's kind of in the middle, and that's about as close to the truth as you're going to get out of the politicians. The Daily Caller last week reported that nearly half of the 204 waivers to the strictures of Obamacare granted in April were to constituents that generally supported the Democratic Party. It's right there. It's out on the web. That's on almost every website. 20% of the total to upscale restaurants, nightclubs, and hotels from former House Speaker and current Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco's district. Isn't that nice? Well, she did encourage everybody to pass the law so we can see what's in the law. I hope we have that cut, Tim. 31 waivers were granted to unions and 27 to health care or drug companies. It's interesting because all these things seem to have a connection politically. Follow the money. Right back up to the top, folks. They refuse to publish the criteria that determine who gets a waiver and to disclose which entities have been denied waivers and why. So much for transparency. I think that we had some clips on our last show, maybe we'll have some on this show, about this is the most transparent presidency. Remember everything was going to be on C-SPAN. The whole healthcare debate was going to be on C-SPAN. I've seen no healthcare debate on C-SPAN. I've not seen Obama out there talking and getting things going from a legislative perspective. You might catch a hearing. I mean, I thought this guy was going to go and take C-SPAN at its word and at what its mission is and bring these hearings and these debates and all this stuff to the people. Hasn't happened. New rules which will have the effect of rewarding the AARP, which spent millions of dollars on lobbying and advertising in support of Obamacare, with the opportunity to earn millions of dollars in additional profits. How? How? Hang on. We'll read on and learn together. First, Obamacare will cripple the ability of health insurance companies that offer Medicare Advantage plans to compete with Medigap providers. Okay? As a consequence, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that nearly 5 million senior citizens will be forced to switch from Medicare Advantage to Medigap plans. As the nation's largest provider of Medigap policies, AARP will benefit directly. Under Obamacare, insurance providers are generally required to publicly release and explain rate increases. I don't know. What are we talking about here? The Medigap providers, though, including AARP, are not covered by the new regulations. Why? Because they were excluded from the original law. This is huge. And this is the first tangible example that you can see of how far-reaching this healthcare law is. And let me tell you, it reaches with unbelievable tentacles in every single direction. The Internal Revenue Service announced an investigation into 5 unnamed donors to nonprofit advocacy groups organized as 501c4s. Okay? If you don't know what those are, to determine if they owe millions of dollars in gift taxes going all the way back to 2008. Under tax law, a 501c4 can engage in lobbying and political campaign activities so long as this is consistent with the organization's purpose and does not the organization's primary activity. These organizations have become a popular vehicle for funding political activities by both Republicans and Democrats. They're going to reach in a little more. They like to reach in. Other examples of President's virtual disregard for Congress in ordering U.S. military action on Libya, suing to stop a U.S. company from operating a new plant because it's located in a right-to-work state. Do you know what a right-to-work state is? We're going to have a nice show about that one day. And a series of recess appointments to avoid the required Senate confirmation. It's important to point out here that now a lot of these recess appointments that Obama made, overreaching his power, I think are going to be called back. I'm not going to go on record yet as saying it, but we know that some courts have made some decisions that are favorable to the people and to having to get things through the Congress, through the legislative process. And we'll see as that moves through what happens. Federal expenditures are now 25% of GDP. Well, what are we doing? What's going on, huh? It's very interesting. We're going to come back with some time to talk more about gun control. Right now, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to listen to stupid things politicians say.
Read my lips.
I did show my scar.
I knew Thomas Jefferson.
Who am I?
I'm Gerald Ford, and you're not.
I'm not a crook.
Why am I here?
The question is whether we're going to go forward to tomorrow or we're going to go past to the back.
The duties of the office.
The duties of the office.
On which I am about to enter.
Of the office on which I'm about to enter.
Flour or chocolates. In his own words, I felt the atmosphere in Russia. I identified with them and tried to put it all into my playing.
Bush's bowling blunder happened in Milwaukee this afternoon. We are happy to report the president is fine, and he picked up his spare and his pride before leaving.
And I'm tired of being embarrassed. I feel right at home in this gymnasium.
Here's Michael Dukakis in 1988 in front of a huge crowd of supporters launching his campaign. He knows how important it is to hit the ground running. What do you say after that entrance? Hi, how are you? I meant to do that. Want to see it again? He certainly made an impression. Those steps on his lips. Raindrops kept falling on their heads as Gerald and Betty Ford arrived in Austria. And President Ford kept falling on his head, first in Salzburg in front of Austrian Chancellor Kreisky. Hi, thanks for dropping by. Then in Michigan on a trip up the same stairs.
Chicken, I gotta be careful. Chicken fecal coliform bacteria.
Dumb.
I made a mistake.
Did something very stupid.
I'll make some mistakes. I admit I've made mistakes. Understand the importance of having the bondage between the parent and the child.
Now, way back when Dan was just a senator, and apparently still politically hungry, he was able to hide and chow down while others politely listened to their president. Hail to the chef. Who would have known that Dan Quayle would someday be a solid fork away from the presidency? Have you seen the Quayle quill? Of course you haven't. It's invisible. Now watch closely. When Dan is asked for his autograph, even though he says, "I don't have a pen," he signs anyway with his fingers.
There is nothing that a good defense cannot beat a better offense.
The ignorant mind is too often a fresh face. The ignorant mind is too often, young mind is too often something you can lose.
In the key area of civil rights, the NAACP.
Millions of innocent people lost their lives because of the bigotry and Hitlerism that permeated Germany and other parts of the world. It was an obscene period in our nation's history. No, not our nation's, but in World War II. I mean, we all lived in this century. I didn't live in this century, but in this century's history. It is a point of history that this nation, our nation, understands. We did not have, matter of fact, we fought Hitlerism.
Here Ike is asked how often Nixon is consulted for his ideas.
If you give me a week, I might think of one. I don't remember.
I welcome this kind of examination.
Chancellor and I will continue to do everything we can to make the microphones work.
If I say what I'm about to say, will it be taken wrong? I hope I stand for anti-bigotry, anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism? No way you would say that.
But also in the abundance it has brought forth in the youth.
We're trying to get unemployment to go up, and I think we're going to succeed.
A word about the president. For 7.5 years, I've worked alongside him, and I'm proud to have been his partner. And we've had triumphs. We've made some mistakes. We've had some We've had some setbacks. Sometimes I feel like Well, I'm a country music fan. I love it, always have.
Yes, and his favorite group is the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
I said to him, you know, there's another one, that the Nitty Ditty Great Bird.
And I defy anyone to say that and chew gum at the same time.
I have the honor to give to the President of USA an instrument of sax.
The year 1881 will come. Another president of the United States will be standing here, perhaps with this podium or an improvement, and we will be at peace with all nations in the world long before 1881. And so, when the year comes, the year 1881, I confidently hope, the 1981, I confidently hope, I don't think anybody was here in 1881.
This is where the Continental Congress met over 200 years ago during the American Revolution. So Lancaster was actually the capital of our nation for one day in 1977.
I want to pitch a no-hitter from now to November 5. The Brooklyn Dodgers had a no-hitter last night.
That's great stuff. Great stuff. Thanks, Tim, putting all that stuff together. You know, we sit and we go over stuff sometimes together. We're emailing it back and forth, and it's amazing how much we find. And when I went to search to find great things that politicians have said, the search is so much harder, and it's so much smaller. I mean, you get hundreds of thousands of options when you want to talk about stupid things that they say, and you get maybe a few hundred when you want to talk about the good things that they say. Gun control is a hot issue, folks. It's real hot. We got to talk about it here. And to be quite honest with you, I'd like to devote at least some portion of every program here on the Freedom Network and talk about guns. Why? Why is it so important? It's so important because without people having the right to arm themselves, we're at a huge risk. Look back in time. Look at what has happened. Look at what human beings have done to one another. The first thing that governments do is disarm the citizens. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying to you that I believe in my heart of hearts, at least I don't think I do at this point, that the government today in 2013 is looking to take all of your guns away. I don't believe that. Today. Follow the slippery slope. 37 and a half years from now, I don't want to give that government that right. Because of that, we have to curtail what we do now. The decisions we make today are so important for tomorrow. This is a mental health issue, folks. Clear, simple, and easy. Gun control has got nothing to do with helping to reduce the amount of insane people that go on killing sprees. I don't think Tim McVeigh used a gun. I think that it would be very easy for us to sit here and it feels good. Well, we won't have any of these assault rifles and none of this automatic stuff. We don't want any of that out there. But it's just another step. Before you know it, you'll be out hunting with a potato gun. Because every time they're going to keep stripping a little bit away. And we need to put our foot down. Adults with handguns, 17 to 19%, 40 to 45 million people with a handgun. What I was saying was, and I wanted to bring that out before I made that point, America, you can attack it, okay? They just remade that movie Red Dawn. I've not seen the new one. The old movie, they had guns. If they didn't have the guns they had, they wouldn't have been able to start that. Now that's a movie, that's not realistic. But could you see in LA, okay, let's just say in a gang-ridden part of LA, and all of a sudden paratroopers are coming down and shooting at people? Your best mobilization of force is your militia. That's your citizens. That's not the army. Let's bring facts to facts. When they talked about that, and we're going to talk about that, they weren't talking about just a militia, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. 2005, now a lot of this stuff you have to understand, when you want data, you've got to go back years and years and years, and the reason for that is not because you want to compare necessarily yesterday to today, but the reason that you've got to go way back is because these studies take time. And when they're funded by the government, they'll come right out, but when they're funded by private, then you got to wait a little bit because they need time to gather all this information. So they take a poll, 2005, percentages owning a firearm, and they go right down through it. 23% of Democrats, 27% of independents, 41% of Republicans. Non-white is 18%. White is 33%. Female's only 13%, while male is 47%. You know, if a woman had an opportunity to pull a little handgun out of her purse as opposed to maybe a little bit of mace, I think she'd feel a little safer about that. I know that I would feel safer about a little handgun than a little bit of mace. In the same poll, gun owners stated that they own firearms for the following reasons: to protect themselves against crime, 67%. Target shooting, 66%. Hunting, 41%. Seems okay to me. Roughly 16,272. So why do I love when articles do that? They give you a precursor of roughly, and then they give you this exact number, right? That's the amount of murders that were committed in the United States in 2008. Of those, about 10,886, or 67%, were committed with firearms. So you take a thing like that, and this is when I started to dig deeper. And what's funny is when you take that statistic, you find out that a lot of those people that were killed because they were trying to rob somebody, and they got shot. So they put those little things, those little tricky twists in there. We're going to see it all here on the Freedom Network. We're going to dig deep. We're going to challenge numbers, and we're going to go right down to the bottom until we get to the truth. 1993, right? In 1993, they took a survey. 0.5% had members who had used a gun for defense during a situation in which they thought someone almost certainly would have been killed if they had not used a gun for protection. If you apply that to the U.S. population, now, that amounts to 162,000 such incidents per year. It excludes military, police, and other things. That's 162,000 people a year that could be alive today because they had a gun. And you want to tell me that you want to ban the guns so that you can save 10,000 people. It doesn't make sense to take my right or somebody else's right away for something that is sick, disgusting, and we should stop at every turn. But come on, numbers are numbers. Don't make those examples. Again, it's the slippery slope. I'm going to say slippery slope so many times I'm not going to be able to say it anymore, but I'm going to keep on saying it. We are on a huge slippery slope. Let's enforce the laws we have. Under federal law, it's illegal and punishable by up to 10 years in prison for the following types of people, to receive, possess, or transport any firearm or ammunition. Someone convicted of or under indictment for felony, punishable by more than 1 year in prison. Someone convicted of a misdemeanor, punishable by more than 2 years in prison. A fugitive from justice. An unlawful user of a controlled substance. Someone who has been ruled as mentally defective, this is the law, has been ruled as mentally defective or has been committed to any mental institution. An illegal alien. Someone dishonorably discharged from the military. Someone who has renounced his or her U.S. citizenship, someone subject to certain restraining orders, or someone convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor. If you could take the effort that they're trying to take in this little law, right? If you could just take and enforce that law, we wouldn't have any problems. So instead of dumping all this money into gun buyback programs and into education at the raw level, which I mean on television, and ads that you see pumped in that we're paying for, telling us that we shouldn't have guns, and biased news shows, and this and all this pressure that we have coming down on us, that you are not compassionate if you don't want to ban guns. I say baloney. You're not compassionate if you do want to ban guns. Enforce the laws we have. Then come and talk to me. In the 10-year period from 98 to 08, 96 million background checks for gun purchases were processed through the federal background check system. Of these, 681,000, or 1%, were denied. During 2002 and 2003, out of 17 million background checks, resulting in 120,000 denials, the federal government prosecuted 154 people. About 0.1% of those denials were legitimate when they appeal them. We're talking this much. That's where you got to go. During 2008, applicants appealed about 1% of the 70,000 background checks that were denied. Of those, 23% were later overturned and the applications were approved. Very interesting. Police chiefs should not have the final say. They should not have the final say. And you know why? I'm going to tell you, because he or she could effectively just ban guns in their town. I'm sorry, but you do not have that right to do that. We need a better system. Each state has its own laws regarding right to carry, and generally they fall into one of three categories. They have shall issue states, where concealed issued to everybody. They have may issue states, where they have to present a reason for carrying a firearm to an issuing authority. And then they have no issue states, where you cannot carry a gun. There are 40 states that are shall issue. Thank goodness. There's 40 of them. There's 9 that are maybe we'll give you one. Even though though it's in the Constitution, maybe if I like you and you tell me a good story and you do enough song and dance, I'll let you have your constitutional right. There's 9 states like that. Massachusetts is one of them. Interesting. Only one state is a no issue. Illinois. Isn't that where our president's from? Interesting. Murder rates in Florida and the United States between 1960 and 2008 on a graph. I'm going to try to get the graph so that you guys can see it. Basically, what it shows here is that somewhere around, I guess it's in the 80s, Florida right to carry law becomes effective. And this is what happens to the murder rates in Florida. Down they go. As a matter of fact, in 2004 or so, it looks like they were even below the national average. But wait, they let people carry guns and less people actually got murdered? Yes. There's such a big disconnect between the fact that you can do far better to protect yourself and you can get these criminals and you can get rid of them yourself if you're only given the chance to do so. Fatal accidents in 2007. This is interesting. There's a whole list. Maybe there's a dozen or so things on the list. I think second or third from the bottom is firearms. Percent of total. It's so little, I can't even read it. Maybe, Tim, we can get this up. People can see it. You see, I'd love to be able to point to where it is. It's right down about in here. Okay? Unbelievable. You know what's ahead of it? Motor vehicle traffic. That's your first one there. Poisoning. Falling. Unspecified. We don't even know why. Guns, which everyone says are designed to do nothing but kill people, kill less people accidentally than unspecified things do. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Suffocation. You have a better chance of being suffocated than you do being shot by a gun, folks. Drowning, fire, burning, land transportation. Classifiable. I don't even know what that would be. Natural or environmental accidents. Pedestrian, other transportation. Struck by, machinery, then firearms. Under that is only pedal cyclists, cuts or pierces, and overexertion. And not by much. Take a peek at that. Pause this. Get it on the DVR, pause it, get up to the TV and take a peek at that. I think you'll really find it interesting. The Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And that's how I'm going to leave you with today. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Gun control proponents have argued, and some federal courts have ruled that the Second Amendment does not apply to individual citizens of the United States, but only to members of militias, which they assert are now the state National Guard. Okay, so you know what I did? I said, you know, let's put this to bed. James Madison, okay? I'm not going to go into who James Madison was. If you don't know, you got to shut off the Freedom Network when you're done. You got to go online and you got to look up some stuff and get up to date on your American history. James Madison addressed this in the Federalist Papers, Federalist Papers 46, saying the reason the right of the people is in there is to protect the militia from having a coup, because it was brought to him, is what would happen if only the militia had the guns? Then what would happen? Could they not have a coup and overthrow the government? And James Madison said, no, that's why we put in there the right of the people. He wrote it. He knows what it means. Folks, we've gone over a lot of stuff here today. We may have some more clips to show you. We're working on them every week, during the week, all the time. We're trying to pull some stuff out, pull it offline. Makes it wonderful. A lot of stuff on YouTube and all over the place. And I got to say that the people that do some of that stuff are fantastic. Folks, we covered ground. We've got a lot of information out there. Now it's your turn. Get information to me. Get it to me. Get it to me at Tim or Gary at gmail.com. Tim or Gary at gmail.com. Follow me. at Rosenberg Gary with a capital R and a capital G on Twitter. I want to thank our producer Tim for all his hard work. This is Gary Rosenberg for the Freedom Network. Have a fantastic week.